Bracha first, and we'll do the Hiratzon. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. And if you haven't said the Hiratzon, you can say it. Yehiratzon melfanecha Adonai Elohai shelo yeh ra davar takala yadi v'lo kashel b'davar halacha v'yismechu v'chaverai v'lo omar al tami takor lo al takor tame v'lo yikashlu chaverai b'davar halacha v'yasmak b'hem ki Adonai yitin chakmon v'piv da'asu savuna gal inai v'yabita nifos matorah seka. So today we're going to really work on understanding Tosafot, how to learn Tosafot, what the purpose of Tosafot is, and how they're helping us out, and how really the journey of halakha, the journey of learning halakha, it really starts with the interaction of Rashi and Tosafot. And we're going to see something really fascinating. We're going to see this interaction on the page teaching us about the Gemara is going to set off a whole conversation. This conversation is going to stretch even into our days. And we see all the Rishonim pick up on this conversation. And then when we get to the very last Tosafot, then we see that one of the very last of Tosafot is the Rosh himself. I think it's Rabbeinu Asher. We're going to learn about him today. And then his son is the Torah. So much of the halakha is coming all the way through the school of Tosafot and then into the Rishonim and into the halakha. So it's going to be really fascinating. And then even we'll take it out to the Mishnah Brewer, to the great Chofetz Chaim, and then I don't know, maybe I can pick up a couple modern post-game here and there. We can see how they're dealing with these halakha.
When did
When did they live?
What period were they in?
So I got a really good detailed history that we're going to go through. So I want to first just focus on, that could be a teaser. I want to focus on learning Tosafot, and then as a teaser we'll get the joy of learning the history, like when they lived. But I think it's really nice to know when you see what time periods people lived, and then where they lived. And if you get a little sense of like what their life was like and their influences. This fell out a little bit of disfavor because there was the whole like rationalist, biblical criticism movement where they were getting very just academic and they were like actually trying to decide halakha on like where they lived and their influences, and that has nothing to do with halakha. It's interesting though just to gain knowledge of who they were and what their opinions are. Because the whole thing that they're transmitting is the Torah Shabbat. It doesn't really matter in a sense where they lived and what they were going through personally, because all they're doing is just transmitting the Torah. But I think it gives us more of a connection to them, and it makes like their Torah ideas come more to life. But we're not going to learn it the academic way, which kind of like distorts it all. Okay, so we started learning Tosafot last week, but I thought it would be nice to do a review. To jump back in. Okay, so the Tosafot is going on the Mishnah. It's going on Haroeh Makom Shenasu Vo Nisim Yisrael. So the person sees a place that a miracle was done in it. These are a little close together. Sorry. Miracles were done in it for the Jewish people, for Yisrael. Okay, so the very first opinion that Tosafot brings down. Let me just double check to have this right. So I think it's Rabbeinu Shammai. And he's going to pull something. Now this idea, and we'll take a look at it later, this idea actually comes from Rabbi Zera in the Yerushalmi. So this idea of what a bracha actually is, I think I have it on your sheets, but it actually comes from the Yerushalmi. And I did start going through the Yerushalmi on Shabbos. It's fascinating. It's amazing how differently it handles our sugya. And it's amazing in all kinds of different directions it goes into. It brings in, and we were talking about Moshe escaping Mitzrayim, Egypt. What's incredible is it doesn't discuss the mystical barrier that I was talking about, but it does discuss, and so this could be a fascinating Gemara to do, it does discuss how did Moshe escape. If Paro wanted to kill Moshe, if the king of the Egyptian empire wanted to kill Moshe, how did he even escape? And the Gemara
was a lady.
Right, but the Gemara gives 3 answers of how he escaped. He is Levi, so he wasn't a slave, but the king of this empire wanted to kill him. So when the king wants to kill you, how are you getting out of this empire? Like, how are you escaping this mighty empire when you're on the executioner's block and the king wants to get... So the Gemara there actually gives like 3 explanations of how he escaped. So B'ezras Hashem will do that. We got all this good stuff on deck, and we got some exciting stuff coming up. Okay, so let me just see. I think I put on your sheet. So it's actually right. It's actually on the second page. It's in Yerushalmi and Brachas. It's 86A2 there. And Rebbe Zera and Rebbe Yehuda, they said in the name of Rab. So what they said is, and I'll put this on the board a little later, but I'll just review it right now. But they say, Kol bracha she'eni ma shem u'malchus eina bracha. So they're bringing a rule over there in the Yerushalmi Brachos, in the Talmud Yerushalmi, that every bracha needs this form. There's a certain form. It needs to have two things. So in our Tosafot here, Tosafot is bringing it down in the name of Rabbeinu Shemaiah, and he's saying, so this is part of the Torah Shabbat Peh. We have a Torah Shabbat Peh. What's a bracha? What actually is a bracha? Bracha needs two things. It needs shem. It needs to mention one of the names of Hashem. And there's a real fascinating discussion in the Yerushalmi of like, if you start with different names of Hashem and you end with a different name, is it good? Is it bad? You know what you're doing. It's pretty interesting conversation. So bracha needs two things. It needs shem, a name, and it needs malchus. It needs to mention the kingship of Hashem. So I believe this was set by the Anshe Knesset HaGadol, the men of the Great Assembly. I don't know if it was set before that. I mean, it could have been set before that. But however, whenever it was set, I mean, it could have been set in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not sure. But this is definitely what we have now. This is a bracha. So it needs this format. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. So here it has the shem. So the name Hashem is the shem. And then he is the king of the universe, is mentioning his kingship. And then it's interesting that if we get into certain brachas where it changes the format slightly. Why does it change the format slightly, which is interesting. But anyway, so the first thing Tosafot is doing is bringing the idea that we talked about before. When the Mishnah just says Baruch, then we see here that the Mishnah is just using an abbreviation. Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi, Rebbe, he's just using an abbreviation in our Mishnah. So even though he just says Baruch, and even though why do we even make the bracha in the first place comes from Yisro, and we saw in the Pasuk in Shmos, in Exodus, that Yisro says Baruch Hashem, but nevertheless, when this Mishnah is talking about all the brachas we're going to make, we're going to use this formula. So all the brachas that we're making are this formula, and then it seems like it's an explanation that the Mishnah is just using an abbreviation. So the Mishnah is just saying Baruch, but what we're using is we want this form. Is there any questions on that? Comments? Okay, so we'll keep moving. So let's go to the next step. So then the next step in the Tosafot is going to be, let's see, he's going to bring next Rabbeinu Shimshon. So let me write down Rabbeinu Shimshon, and then we'll see the next part. So Rabbeinu Shimshon, what's he going to say? Rabbeinu Shimshon, he's from a place called Kotzi. And he is going to say this. He's going to give an example from the Ri, and we'll talk about a little later who the Ri is. So he says that the Ri was, I don't have a great, anyone have a good definition of regil? Regular, usually.
Accustomed to.
What's that?
Accustomed to.
Accustomed to. That's good. Like accustomed to. Everybody uses accustomed. So he was regil. He was accustomed to make a bracha. On lightning. Right, lightning is called Bracha. He was custom to make a bracha on lightning, and then he tells us the bracha he made, and Rabbeinu Shimshon says that the bracha was the Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Shikoko. Ugavoraso. Malayo. So Rabbeinu Shimshon, he's saying the next step in the Tosafot, he's giving an example, and he's saying the Ri, it's probably the Ri Azakin, that he was accustomed, and he would make a bracha on lightning, and he would use this format, and he would say, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, Elokeinu, our God, Melech Haolam, the King of the universe, Shekoko, that his strength, Ugavoraso, his power, Malei Olam, fills the whole world. Okay, so what, does anybody see anything interesting with this next step? What do you guys think? There's something that interesting that he's doing. So let me point it out. Really, what we started with is in our Mishnah, we have all kinds of brachas. It goes through a whole list of brachas. The first bracha we make when we see a place where a miracle happened. The second bracha talks about when we uproot Avodah Zarah from Eretz Yisrael, from the land of Israel, we make a bracha on uprooting the Avodah Zarah. The third bracha, it goes through all these natural wonders. Like if you see lightning, or hear thunder, or there's an earthquake, or there's winds, or all these natural phenomena, you make a bracha, Shekoko Gavurase Malei Olam. Now what he did here, the Tosafot did something interesting. What they're doing is they're proving this. They're giving more proof. They're giving more proof of this formula. And why are they giving more proof of this formula? They're giving proof of the formula because in our raya, in our source, how do we know to make a bracha on these things to begin with? We saw Yisro just said Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem because he'd seal Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim miyad Paro. Because Yisro saw that the Jewish people, we talked about this before in our earlier class, that Israel was saved by Hashem from the hand of Egypt and the hand of the Pharaoh. And then Yisro just comes out and he goes, Baruch Hashem. So he only says Baruch. The Mishnah itself just gives us the formula of Baruch. So Tosafot is explaining to us that even though Yisrael only said Baruch, even though the Mishnah only says Baruch, this is the rule. That to be a real, not real, but to be, a kosher bracha, or however you want to say it, to have the appropriate format, or the appropriate way to do the bracha, it needs these two things. So Rabbeinu Shemaiah first brings that we need Shem and Malchus. Now, even though this skips down to the third bracha, but why he's bringing this is he's bringing this as proof of this is how we make the bracha. And he's bringing this as proof, and he's showing that the Ri, when he made a bracha on lightning, he would use this format. He would use Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, Shekoko Gavuraso Malei Olam. And what he was pointing out is, the important thing he was pointing out is, he uses the same format that Rabbeinu Shemaiah said to use. This is the format for the bracha. Here's actual proof. The Ri all the time made brachas on lightning, and he used this formula. So that's the formula, and it's clarifying, it's explaining to us that even though... Yeah, okay.
This is Rabbeinu Shimshon from Kosi is where?
So these may be some of the later Tosafos. We are going to start the history of the Tosafos today, because Rad Hashem, but we're going to start just with the earliest Tosafos, just like Rashi's immediate son-in-laws and grandsons. So we're going to start to build that list, and you'll see that list is pretty...
And who's the Ri?
So these are going to...
Ri?
So Ri, we're going to see, the Ri is, I believe, a grandson.
Of Rashi?
Of Rashi. So we're going to learn about the Ri today. Yeah, I'm going to give you a little history.
Was Resh Gimel Yud Lamed? Who's that?
Oh, this is just the word that Tosafot uses, regil.
Regil.
So it means like regular, custom.
Oh, I see. Okay.
usually, I find it so hard to just translate it nicely into the sentence. I guess a custom's good. I don't know. It's easier to say regil. I'm so used to, I'm regil to say regil, so now it just sounds funny to translate it, because like regil just gives it that halakhic implication, that you do it all the time. But right, it means just, this is what he usually did, or this is what he did all the time, or, so he's saying like many times he witnessed the Ri making this bracha. But what we're going to see today is we're going to see that like the Ri, I believe, is like the third generation from Rashi. And then here we have the later generation. We'll do another class, hopefully, on the later Tosafos, because the whole Tosafos period was about 200 or some years. And what's interesting is it's spread. It's like it was originally, I don't know, like if it was Rashi just literally just teaching in his home. Sometimes there is this idea of the Beis Rab where the Rab just taught in his home. I don't think it was later until Rabbi Chaim Volozhin that the whole idea of the modern yeshiva. I mean, there was massive mesitvas in Bavel, in modern day Iraq, like Surah Pampatisa, which we learned about before, like Nakardia. There was massive. But then as we got into Europe, as we got into the Rishonim period, I think things were smaller again. And then Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, I believe when he started the yeshiva of Volozhin, then things expanded again. Then all of a sudden we got bigger modern yeshivas in Europe, and then now the big yeshivas we have in America. So you get to Lakewood, but I believe there was a period where it was just people learning in the homes of their Rav, and that was a long time too. Like I think like when Abraham taught Yitzhak and Yishmael, and he's teaching them Torah, it was in the tent. It was in the base midrash they had set up, and when Yaakov was teaching his 12 sons, that they were learning in the tent. But there may have been some kind of yeshiva at some point too, because Shem and Aver had some kind of yeshiva. I think it was even in Yerushalayim, which is interesting. And then so I don't know. But there is, but as we see today, here we can have just a little, gathering here in the Kollel. And Torah can be learned in many different environments. Bigger yeshivas, smaller, kollels, and even people's homes. People can go learn from a rabbi. Okay, so right, step one, step two, and then if I can I erase this? Okay. But what's interesting here is Rabbeinu Shimshon's from a later generation, and then I'm sorry I didn't explain it perfectly, but then it began to spread out, and they began to even go to different countries. So the students, as the generations of students kept going on, they would branch out. Like in a sense, we could think of it, they made like Rashi Yeshiva branches. Like there was like, the Tosafos started branching out and took Rashi's teachings and Rashi's learnings and how he taught them the Mishnah and the Gemara, and they spread out all over Europe. So it's interesting. So it's kind of the Rashi school kind of spread like all throughout Europe.
When Rabbeinu Shimshon at the same time as the Ray?
So I believe these two are later. They're like later. I mean, the whole the whole period of Tosafos went on, I think, around 200 some years. So it was a long time. I believe these were the later Tosafos.
Later.
And they probably didn't even learn from Rashi himself at all. I mean, his rabbi is probably the Ri, who's the third generation. So, I mean, the sons-in-laws, which we'll talk about later, right, they've learned directly from Rashi. The grandsons probably also learned directly from Rashi. But then after that, it's possible the next generation never learned directly from Rashi. They had to learn Rashi like us. They had to learn it, in the book, in the book. They had to learn Rashi on the page like everyone else, Okay, so that's step 1, 2. Can I can erase it and go? Okay, we'll go to step 3. Okay. But this is any questions?
You're saying Rabbeinu Shimshon and Shmaya were Tosafot?
They were Baalei Tosafos, and they're probably in the later generations.
Every 13
But it
years.
sounds like from this, it sounds like he was a student of the Ri. So it sounds like the Ri is Zaken, because he was regularly watching the Ri do this bracha. It probably means that the Ri was his Rebbe. And he watched, and it was a thing. There's a concept that of Maisa Rav. That's also a concept. And then, so what we had there was a concept called Ma'aser Rav. If we see a Talmid Chacham do something, we can use that as proof of that's the halakha. Like if we see like Rav Chaim Kanievsky, like he does Kiddush a certain way, that's halakha. Like why is he doing that? He's not making it up. He's doing it because all the Torah that he's learned over his lifetime, that's how he knows the halakha goes. So we can use this concept of Ma'aser Rav also as proof of halakha sometimes. And we'll see this. And that's what the Tosafot was doing there. He's using concept of Ma'aser Rav. Okay, so then let's go to step 3. So that's the first 2 steps in the Tosafot. Now also, this is unusual Tosafot in the sense of sometimes this is not a great standard Tosafot because the usual formula is a question and an answer. So it usually goes through like he'll ask a question on Rashi and then he'll answer, the question on Rashi. So he's showing potential kasha on understanding Rashi, and then the Tosafot will clear it up. So there'll be a kasha and a teretz. And so when we do another Tosafot that have a more standard format, we'll break that down more. This one is pretty straightforward, so it's not really any machlokas here. Okay, so the second example is that. Now then, this is actually an explanation from the Ri himself, I think. So the Ri explains. He explains. It's interesting, like just how he sets this up, and he explains that he brings. Shall I write all the words out? Do you want me to write? I'm just translating the Tosafot. Do you want me to write the words in the Tosafot out, or I'm not sure? It's okay? Okay. So he brings Yerushalmi. He brings the Yerushalmi. And that's on, and then I'll write this word. It's he brings the word parakim. This is a good word to know. We're going to see it actually in a different context than our sugya, but here it means the parakim. So what's that word mean? It means that is in that. Sorry. That is. So the dalet in Aramaic is that is. That is, and then paraki means our parak, or our chapter, meaning like parak tashi. Like we're in parak tashi. We're in the 9th chapter of Masechta Brachos. So he's saying that if you go to Yerushalmi, go to the same place, go to the 9th parak, learn the same Mishnah, but it's going to say something different over there in Yerushalmi. And then he's going to bring Rebbe Zera, and I'm going to write out exactly, he abbreviates it here. Okay, let me write exactly what he writes, and then I'll show you a good technique. So I think that will be helpful. So then he brings Rabbi Zera, and let's see, and then he just says, etc. The word for etc. here is like kulo, right? So that's the abbreviation there for etc. And then he brings this statement and he says, okay, so I'll show you like this. This is why it feels difficult to learn the Tosafot, but this is a great example of how it's really simple if we just do a little investigative work. So this is a good example because this is all he really brings. He's like, all he brings is whole bracha. Right, so I'll write it out exactly. I'll write out exactly how it's written in Tosafot here, and then we'll break it down. Okay. Okay, so let me see. So that I think is how it's written out. Okay, so that's how he writes it out, and then we'll break it down. So it can seem very confusing because it's very brief on words. So all he really wrote out is like he says like the re-explains Maisi Yerushalmi's bringing the Yerushalmi to Pirkin and our Parak, and then this is what he writes out. He just says Rebbe Zera, etc. And he says Kol Bracha She'ein Ba, etc. Okay, what does that mean? Like what does that mean? So here's what we got to do. So here's how we make Gemara, Tosafos, Rashi, Rishonim, Achronim, anything. Acharonim usually are very good at speaking everything out. So Acharonim are really, really long. Because if you think about it, it goes from like the Chumash, where Hashem uses his Lashon Ketzara, where Hashem uses, as few words and letters as possible, but it's like an infinite being, so there's so much meaning in every letter, so much meaning in every word, and Hashem doesn't need to use a lot of words. So it starts out in a very concise manner there. Then the Torah Shabbat Peh is like Rebbe follows that formula that Hashem does, and he tries to write the Mishnah really concise in every letter, every word, trying to conserve it, write it as short as possible, very simple. And then the Amoraim expand on that some. But even as we get into the Amoraim, even when we get in the Gemara, there needs to be more expansion on that, because we may need more explanation. And sometimes there's more parameters. We'll see a halakha that comes in. So then the Rishonim start to expand more. But even the Rishonim, because everyone's trying to follow this really brief, really simple format. So even the Rishonim sometimes they're really brief. And then if we learn a couple Acharonim, we'll see like the Acharonim just give us the whole cheat sheet. Like the Acharonim go, this is what the Chumash was saying, and all this explanation, and this is what the Mishnah is saying, and all this explanation, this is what the Gemara is saying, and all this explanation, and this is what Rashi is saying, and all that. So the Acharonim get really long. Because the Acharonim are we're going to explain it all to you, we're going to make it all clear, we're going to tell you exactly how we learned it, and we're going to give you the full explanation. So everything gets longer and longer and longer as we go along. And it's also maybe because we don't have it all clear, and we don't know it as well as the generations that came before, so we need more and more explanation as we go along. When we have the Torah Shabbat Peh clear, these are all just reminders of what it was, and then okay, so what he's bringing, so I'm going to write down what he's bringing. So what we do is, so if we see something really brief and we don't understand it, because really it doesn't totally make sense. All he really says is, he explains, and he brings the Yerushalmi in our parak. So it's in the 9th parak of Berachos, in the Yerushalmi, and he just says, Rebbe Zeir, etc. Kol Bracha She'imba, etc. It doesn't mean anything. It means Rebbe Zeir, etc. And then every bracha that isn't in it. That doesn't make sense. But that's when we start to do the detective work. So then we actually go and find a Yerushalmi, and I even have a nice art scroll, so we'll bring in the art scroll sometimes. But now you can get a nice art scroll Yerushalmi even, and I'm sure maybe they have them here. So we actually look it up. So then, if we go to the Yerushalmi, we do our investigation. The Yerushalmi, and it's on Brachos, and it's on the second page of your sheets. And then you can actually look it up. It's on 86A2. And then, what does it actually say? So what it actually says there, it says Rebbe Zera and Rebbe Yehuda said in the name of Rav. And what did they say? They said this. They said, Kol Bracha She'ein Ima Shem Umalchus Eina Bracha. And then this becomes super easy to learn. Before, we have some kind of cryptic hieroglyphics, broken fragments, and we don't know what it's talking about. And then we do a little research, and now it's super easy. So every bracha that doesn't have with it, name, kingship, is not a bracha, not a blessing. And now it's super easy. And so now we go back, it's like, oh, Rebbe Zera. Oh, he was just quoting, like Rebbe Zera, Rebbe Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Kol Bracha. All right, every Bracha that doesn't have in it, but it's Yima is the actual Lashon, doesn't have a name, Namakus, not Bracha. Okay, good. All right, so here's something interesting though. So why did Tosafot do it this way? So Tosafot did something very interesting here. The whole purpose of this Tosafos is to teach us what a bracha is, right? Because remember, Rashi didn't mention that. Rashi didn't deal with that at all. Rashi didn't mention that a bracha, when it just says Baruch in the Mishnah, that means the whole formula. Rashi didn't say that. Rashi was concerned with just what are the nisim that were done, what were the miracles they've done, and Rashi just tells us. It was the crossing of the Red Sea, it was the crossing of the Jordan River, it was the valleys of the Arnon. And Rashi just started giving us a little bit of a list of some of the miracles that were done. So Rashi was focused on the miracles. So here Tosafos is coming as an addition, like the word Tosafos means addition. It's coming to add something. And the Tosafos, the students of Rashi are saying, right, it's good. Rashi cleared up miracles. We're not going to argue. We got no difficulties. Very simple, very straightforward. Nothing to clear up. We feel like Rashi should have also mentioned this whole idea about the bracha, because it just says Baruch in the Mishnah. Yisro just says Baruch Hashem. We feel like we need more explanation to give to the students, and we're going to bring in and teach now something Rashi didn't teach, and we're going to just teach the bracha. And maybe that's why it's so straightforward, because there's no kasha in Rashi, there's no difficulty in understanding Rashi. It's just something we felt that Rashi left out that Rashi should have mentioned, and we're going to go through this. Now what's interesting is first they brought in Rabbeinu Shemaiah. Rabbeinu Shemaiah said this. Rabbeinu Shemaiah says that every bracha needs Shem and Malchus. Then we bring in the example of Rabbeinu Shimshon, and he says the Re, he would all the time, he was regular to always make, when he made the bracha on lightning, he would use the format. He would use Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. The Re himself, when he made the bracha, he would always use that format. Now, what's interesting is now it's like, okay, where did Rabbeinu Shemaiah, where did the Re, where did they learn this from? Well the Re himself used to teach that if we learn in the Yerushalmi, Rebbe Zera and Rebbe Yehuda said in the name of Rav, this is the rule. And now they bring in the rule. This is the source for the rule's in the Yerushalmi, and every bracha that doesn't have the Shem Malchus is not a bracha. Great. Nice. So that's the first three steps, and they completely clarified what's a bracha.
So that's in the Gemara and Yerushalmi, but not in the Gemara here.
Not in the Gemara here, yeah. Right. So that's another reason why they're picking it up, because it's really not dealt with in our Gemara, but in the Gemara and Yerushalmi they felt it was important to deal with it. Rashi also didn't think it was so important to deal with. I don't know, it could just be like everyone knows how to make a bracha. I mean, the truth is, if we didn't really go through all this, we still know we made many brachas, and we're always using Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, and we really would have maybe just assumed that when it says Baruch, that's really talking about the formula.
So they're not explaining what the halacha is, they're telling us what the source of the halacha is.
They're not the halakha of
everybody. You're saying
right. The halakha of what the formula of a blessing is.
Well, you say everybody already knew that.
Right. So here we get to finally experience what it's like to actually know Torah Shabbat Peh. Because we generally didn't learn, the bracha inside. We learned it from our parents. We learned it from Rebbe at school. We learned it the way we're supposed to learn it. We learned it for Torah Shabbat Peh. You want to make a bracha? Here, everyone knows Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, B'rei Pri Hagafen. You can go probably 100%. Probably 100% Jews know that. I'd say we're pretty close. I think the B'rei Pri Hagafen is pretty widespread. So everyone has a concept of the formula. So Torah Shabbat Peh is alive and well. It's just not in every area. It's in some areas. All right, so that's first 3 steps. Let's see, now we'll go, I'm going to probably erase this and we'll go on to the next step. So he brings the Yerushalmi, he brings that. Then it's interesting, now he's going to go, this is almost like a new subject. Now he's going to go somewhere else. It's still the same subject, but it's a different aspect of the halakha we're going to talk about. Okay, so now he's going to go somewhere else. And now the Tosafos are going to bring in Rabbeinu. And who's Rabbeinu? Who's the Rabbeinu for all the Tosafot? Anybody? Rabbi.
Is Tosafot mainly in Yerushalmi rather than Bavli?
No, it's you know what's interesting? I don't think there's Tosafos over there. I didn't bring it into that. I think it's the Pnei Moshe. It's very interesting. It's very different. Very different. I don't think Rashi did commentary on the Yerushalmi.
But Tosafot did?
No, they're just quoting. They're just pulling something out of it.
You're looking at Yerushalmi or you're looking at Bavli?
No, what I just put up on the board was from Yerushalmi in the Gemara.
Right.
Yeah.
It was from the Bavli quoting the Yerushalmi.
Yeah, Bavli quoting. Yeah, no, we're doing Tosafos in the Bavli. Yeah, all this is the Bavli right here. Oh, sorry, this is
Commentating.
It's all right here. This one right here. We're doing this Tosafos right here.
I see.
Okay. All right, so let me put up the next step here. So what's that? That was 3. Now we go to 4. And this is going to go into something else now. This is going to go in a different aspect of halakha. We're going to see. So he's going to quote. Now he's going to use this word nira, and this is a very important word when he says this. Nira. Vin nira. I don't know if I get to include it right, but it's something like vin nira and nira, and I think it means and it appears. And we'll talk about why he's saying that. So it says Venira li Rabbeinu. And it says it appears to Rabbeinu. And we're going to see this a lot in the Tosafos. It appears to Rabbeinu. Alright, who's Rabbeinu? Who's Rabbeinu? Who's the rabbi of all the Tosafos? Who started it? Who started all the Tosafos? Who's their Rabbeinu? It's Rashi. So anytime the Tosafos say Rabbeinu, or sometimes they'll say Kuntras, they're talking about Rashi. Rashi's Rabbeinu. So this is why I think it is important sometimes to understand the history and who everyone is. Because with Rishonim, with Acharonim, with anyone really, with any Mefarshim, even with Tanaim, Amoraim, if you know who their Rebbe is, who's their Rebbe, who's their students, then sometimes it gives us insight into the conversation even more. Like we learned last time around Pesach, that very exciting incident with Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yochanan, and the whole fight. It was Rabbi Yeshua, and the whole fighting in the yeshiva in Yavna, and you get so much more of the drama, and you get so much more, and then you start to understand. And then when you know what's the chain of students versus on one side versus the chain of students on the other side, then sometimes you'll see the machlokas can go into different generations and different aspects, and you'll get a clear explanation of why that's happening. But when the Tosafos say Rabbeinu, they're talking about Rashi because that's their Rabbeinu. So Rabbeinu is always going to be Rashi and Tosafos. Okay, so something appears to Rashi, and he says the Dafka.
Don't they use Rabbeinu for Yehuda Nasi?
Right, so that's in general. So he's called Rebbe. Oh, great, he's called Rabbeinu. So that's for the Mishnah. So in a sense too, Rabbeinu, but they would refer to him as Rebbe or Rabbeinu HaKodesh. But students in a certain yeshiva are going to always refer to their Rosh Yeshiva sometimes as Rabbeinu. Okay. So the Dafka, let's see what language is. The Dafka, like that exactly or specifically that. Let's try exactly. Let's see if that works here. like exactly, and we'll say liros. Now I'll just write it out. Let's see, so roa mishaloshim mishaloshim yom mishaloshim Shaloshim Yom, and then he says Dumya. Zeroah, and I'll translate all this. Zeroah, and then he says Yam Hagadol. Yam, we got Yams and Yoms. Yam Hagadol. Okay, let me leave enough room to write the translation. Alright, so Yam Hagadol. The Paraki. Now we're going to see the word Paraki used in a different context here, but it means the same thing. And so we saw Pirkim before, which meant Arab Perak, and that's in Aramaic, and Parakim is the same thing in Lashon and Kodesh. Okay, let me just write it all. Let me get it all on the board here. So then, and then it says the Amar, and then we'll go through it all. The Amar, the Yerushalmi, the Parakim. The Parakim Hainu Shloshim Yom. Okay, that's a lot, but we'll go through it and it's going to be pretty easy. Okay, and that is our Tosafot. Okay, so that will take us in. So let me see how we're doing on time, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, so we're about 10 minutes. Do we want to take a break now? Or do we want to finish up? Maybe finish up Tosafot? What do you think?
Finish up.
Finish up? Okay, so we'll finish up and then we'll take the break. Okay, for the history of the Tosafot. Okay, so let's translate this. Okay, so let's see what he's saying. So we're gonna get a translation. So right, Venira, sometimes, a lot of times we'll say Venira li. And this is interesting. When it says Venira li, it appears to me, it means he's giving an explanation. This is how I learned it. Venira li, this is how I learned it. This is how I see it. This is how it appears to me. Here, Tosafot are doing something interesting. They're going Venira le Rabbeinu, saying this is how it appears to Rashi. So they're saying this is how Rashi learned it, and this is a teaching they learned from Rashi. Okay, so Venira le Rabbeinu appeared to Rashi, did dafka, that it's exactly the roat, like when he sees it, to see from 30 days to 30 days, or 30 days to 30 days, that it's like, that he sees Yam HaGadol, so the Great Sea. What's the Great Sea? The Mediterranean. And why is the Mediterranean so great? Let's see if I can actually spell this right. Mediterranean. Anybody know I spell Mediterranean? Rainy. There's an EA in there or something. I don't know. It's getting all funky.
Only one T.
Only one T? Mediterranean. Wow. Okay, wait. I think one T is gonna help. Okay.
Isn't Turanian like?
Yeah, it's
land.
Terrain.
R-A-E-N.
Something like that.
Yeah, still missing syllable.
Mediterranean. I'll have to Google. Hey, I'm taking off the board. Great Sea, Mediterranean. I'll have to Google the spelling later. Hey, what's the dictionary reading? All right, Mediterranean Sea, which is so great, it's like hard to spell. Or okay, you can give me the spelling. But it's great. So why is it great? We talked about this a little before. It's great because it's the sea that's right next to Eretz Yisrael. But if we also think about it, the Yam HaGadol in some sense is like the whole ocean's the Yam HaGadol. Because when you take the Mediterranean Sea and it's attached to the Atlantic Ocean. And then the Atlantic Ocean is attached to the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean is attached to the Indian Ocean, and that's attached to the Southern Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. So really all the oceans are attached. But yet, and it's a very famous Rashi on this, that really Hashem has it divided up into 7 oceans, 7 main oceans. And then Rashi says something interesting. He says like the fish taste different in Spain than they taste different in a different area. There's different fish that live in the different oceans, different temperatures, different plants. So really Hashem's given a unique character to each of the oceans, even though they're all attached. And then the greatest of all the oceans is the Mediterranean, because it's the one that's next to Eretz Yisrael. So because it's the ocean attached to Eretz Yisrael, that's the greatest of all the oceans. That's the Yam HaGadol. And then this word parakim.
Yeah.
So parakim oh, you got it? Oh, good. For my next trek, I'm going to spell Mississippi. Okay, so let me see what we get. So Mediterranean. Let's write it down here. Wow, that I really was off on that today. So that's the 2 R's. You got the 2 R's working. So Rain. It sounds so. Let's see, everything's easy after you do the detective work. We just have to do the detective work, and then everything's simple. Like I said, the Mediterranean, and then parakim, they translate as intervals. So there's a thing of intervals, different time periods, and that it says in the Yerushalmi that it says in we'll say Talmud, or we'll say the Jerusalem Talmud, and it says that this word parakim, so parakim is 30 days. So there's a concept. There's a concept of parakim. Now, what Tosafot is doing here is very, very interesting. If we go back to our Mishnah, this is a really good tip. When we learn Mishnah and we're in the Gemara, we should always be flipping back and forth back to the Mishnah. That is such a big point. A lot of people they learned the Mishnah days ago. We're way past that. When we're learning Gemara, we're always flipping back to the Mishnah. Because what were we doing? We're learning that Mishnah. We're learning the explanation of the Mishnah. We're always flipping back to that Mishnah. And we want to see what the Gemara is talking about. We want to get we're doing Chazara on the Mishnah again and again and again. We're learning it. We flip back. What's in the Mishnah? We go back to Gemara. What's in the Mishnah? So that's a great technique too. Here, something very fascinating is happening, because I believe it's the almost 5th bracha we deal with. Let's see. I'll go through the list. So the first bracha is if you see the place where a miracle happened for the Jewish people. Second bracha in the Mishnah is if a place where the Avodah Zarah was uprooted from the land. You make a bracha on that. Then what happens if you see like a comet or earthquakes or thunder or big winds or lightning? You make a bracha on that. The fourth one is if you see mountains or hills or oceans or rivers or deserts, you make a bracha on that. Then Rebbe Yehuda brings in if you see the Yam HaGadol, you make a special bracha on that. If I got the count right, so that's about the 5th bracha down. All this started because we're talking about the first bracha of how Roa, the makom, that a miracle was done. Yet all of a sudden, for some reason now, Tosafot is bringing in the 5th bracha. He's bringing in a concept of the 5th bracha. But he's telling us something very interesting, and we want to really take a note of this, because a lot of the Rishonim are going to start to talk about it. Why is he bringing this in? Why are they bringing it in? He's bringing in this concept from the 5th bracha, and the concept is this, that Rebbe Yehuda brought in. Rebbe Yehuda brought in this concept that every 30 days, when you see the Mediterranean Ocean, you can make this special bracha on the Yam HaGadol. And then you have to wait another 30 days to make the bracha again. Why is Tosafot bringing this in? Because this idea, parakim, even though the Mishnah didn't start and say it, this idea of Rebbe Yehuda may apply to every one of the brachas. Or we'll have to see where it applies and where it doesn't apply. So what the inference is, he's not saying it outright, but what the inference is when do we make a bracha on that place where we see a miracle? Only every 30 days. So we come to the place, we see the place, we make a bracha, we would have to wait maybe another 30 days to make it again. And it's a very tricky thing here, because we thought maybe a simple reading of the Mishnah, this concept of parakim, is only dealing with making a bracha on the Yom Gadol. And now Tosafot is throwing his curveball. And Tosafot is saying, well, folks, you know what? This idea of parakim, it may apply to a lot more of the brachas than you think. And the Rishonim are going to go, this is the kind of stuff Rishonim love to talk about. This is like catnip to the Rishonim. What are you doing, Tosafot? What are you doing? You're bringing this concept. It didn't say that in the Mishnah. No way. Didn't say it. And now you're going to tell us that this parakim concept may apply to just more than that one bracha? Okay, where are you getting that from? Then we're going to see when we get into the Rishonim, they're going to talk about this. So does it apply?
Are the Tosafot Rishonim?
Yeah. I mean, so there's early Rishonim and later Rishonim. I believe, it's been a while, it's been a long time, it's been crazy how long it's been. It's been over 20 years, but I believe I heard a shiur from Rabbi Yitzhak Berkowitz, who's the current Rosh Yeshiva at Aish Torah, and I believe he was saying the early Rishonim still had the Mesorah intact. So they had the Torah Shabbat Peh perfectly intact from all the way back that they learned from their Rebbe. But then, if we remember historically, after Rashi dies, then the Crusades start. And Edom's getting all riled up again. And now it's like back to the conditions in the early Roman Empire where they're killing Talmidei Chachamim. There's just so much like pillaging and destruction going on all the time, and things are getting forgotten. And it seems like after the early Rishonim, so after Rashi, after the very first few generations of the Baalei Tosafos, the craziness starts, and then I believe, according to the shiur, that the later Rishonim don't have it anymore. They're only learning it like we're learning it now. And because of that difference, that's why Rabbi Yosef Karo, who, I want to say Akron, 1600s, probably definitely an Akron, when he writes the Shulchan Aruch, which we'll get to, he's only going to use this format of 2 out of 3, and he's going to use the Rif, Rabbi Alfasi, he's going to use the Rosh, who is one of the last of the Tosafos, which is interesting. So the Rosh is in the chain of the Tosafos, and he's going to use Rambam, and then he's going to paskin 2 out of 3. So why is he not using later Rishonim? Because when Rambam, when the Rosh, when the Rif write their commentary, they still have the Torah Shabbat Peh. I believe Rashi had the Torah Shabbat Peh. He went to his yeshiva, his Rebbe, he learned it, and then came back to his Twa.
So I didn't use Rashi because Rashi wasn't succinct about what a halakha is.
Rashi wasn't really. Rashi wasn't paskening. Rashi is just giving us so the Mishnah is not paskening all. It's very rare. Occasionally, the Mishnah. Well, the Mishnah I don't think paskens anywhere. The Gemara occasionally will say Hilkasa Kavate, like they'll say this is the halakha. Like I wish it did it all the time. I don't know why it doesn't all the time. But because I think the Gemara was more interested in what it was doing is giving us all the parameters of the halakha. And I think in some ways the goal is that and ideally maybe at some point, every Jewish person should be able to understand, the halakha and be able to decide. Now maybe there's going to be some things that are very, very difficult. And then you're going to really need to go to Talmud Chacham. But for the most part, just say everyday things, I gotta make Kiddush this Shabbos and I just forgot something about the light. Look it up. No, you can. Now we have these easy things. Now we have Shulchan Aruch, we have Mishnah Brewer, we have easy, guidelines. We have even easier now. Shabbos Kitchen, we have all kinds of things. But I believe the goal of Rebbe Yehuda Hanassi, and I believe the goal of the Amoraim, is that every Jewish person would still have the Torah Shabbat Peh. The goal was that it would be unbroken. These would just be notes to help us remember. These were like notes, memory aids to just. But I don't think they counted on, right, just as they didn't count for the early brutality in the Roman Empire, they didn't account for the brutality of the Crusades and the Inquisition, that it would really be, it'd really be wrested away, where we could just have this. All right, that's the end of part 1 right now. And then we'll take a break and we'll do part 2. Any questions? Okay, so we're gonna go into Rashi, and we're gonna go into some of the Bali Tosafos. I think it's gonna be pretty interesting to take a look at this. So Rashi had 3 daughters, and then I mean, our tradition is that he taught the daughters Torah, which is very interesting. So they were probably a huge like Talmud Chacham. And then eventually the daughters got married, and they became like the first generation of the Tosafos. So Rashi has 3 daughters. This article here, I think it's from Chabad.com. They didn't list the daughters. I think one was Miriam. I forgot all the names of the daughters, but for today we'll just do the Tosafos. So the first daughter is going to marry Rabbi Meir ben Shmuel, and he's going to be he marries the oldest daughter. Okay, and then he is known as the Rashbam. So I mean, we're gonna see the Rashbam a tremendous amount in Tosafos. And I think there's one Masechta where he comes in and does most of the commentary. There's one Masechta where Rashi did not finish. He was nifter, he passed away. And one of the Tosafos came in and finished it. I believe there's one Masechta where the Rashbam does it. There's a couple places where the Rashbam's like the main commentary, which is interesting. So he's the Rashbam. And then, let me see, let me see if I get this right. Oh, I'm sorry. No? Sorry. That's going to be the grandson. I'm sorry. This is too many names here. Okay, so the first daughter is going to marry Rabbi Meir ben Shmuel, and then he's going to have 3 sons. He's going to have Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir, which is his son, and this is the Rashbam. So the Rashbam he's one of the grandsons of Rashi. So here's the Rashbam, and he's the grandson. Then we're going to have Rabbi Yitzhak ben Meir, and he's known as the Rebam. And we're going to see these names a lot, and this is why it's just going to be interesting. It's going to be a lot more meaningful if if we know who all the sons are. So this is his first son, Rabbi Meir ben Shmuel's first son, and his second son is Rabbi Yitzhak ben Meir. He's the Rebam. And then his third son is going to be very, very famous. And this grandson is going to argue with his grandfather a lot. And then if you use a certain kind to fill in, anybody know who this is going to be? There's 2 kinds. You can get a Rashi to fill in, or you can get Rabbeinu Tam. So this is going to be the famous Rabbeinu Tam. So it's really fascinating. So what we see here is, we see that the oldest daughter marries Rabbi Meir ben Shmuel, and he's a student of Rashi. So this is the next, we call it really the first generation of Tosafos. And then this is going to be the second generation of Tosafos. So the son-in-laws are first generation. The son-in-laws are the first generation of Tosafos. And then it's actually going to be grandsons that are the third generation. Now I think there may have been maybe a couple students we'll have to see, there may be a couple outstanding students in these generations too, but it's mainly just the family at first. So it's mainly just son-in-laws and grandsons are the first 2 generations of the Tosafos. And we're going to see these names.